Hey all, Bart here. It's 2021 and consoles are a little hard to get your hands on these days. Luckily, there's always the secondhand market. I snagged this bad boy off of Craigslist for a crazy good deal. It's a good thing I bought two of them. Oh, son of a bitch! The Xbox. Microsoft's first entry into the console market was released November 15th, 2001 and went head-to-head against the GameCube and a DVD player. Now, Microsoft had seen what Sony had managed to do with the PlayStation and they wanted in on that action. They had the money, the influence, and the rock. What could go wrong? Yeah, Sony released something onto this world the likes of which had never been seen before or since. The PlayStation 2, though underpowered, was destined for greatness, and I don't think anyone saw it coming. But that's not what this is about. This is about the Xbox. I really gotta stop leaving these everywhere. Here's your controller, bro. The original Xbox controller, commonly referred to as the Duke, wasn't exactly what you would call well-received. What the f***? It was big, bulky, and hard to use, which led to it being heavily criticized by the likes of IGN, Penny Arcade, Game Informer, and me. Yeah, the controller was massive, but not because they wanted it to be. This was mostly due to the supplier refusing to manufacture more compact circuit boards for them. So Microsoft settled on making the controller humongous, and tried justifying it by saying that people will be used to it because of its similarities to the Dreamcast controller everyone loves. What? But in early 2002, the console launch in Japan looked a bit different. Bundled with the console wasn't a Duke, but a smaller, more sensible controller, the Controller S. And while it never did get a cool nickname, what it did get was usability. Oh my god, is this controller good! And while many people know about the Duke, most have only ever used the redesign. This was most likely due to the fact that it completely replaced the original after a short period of time. Of course, there were those that swear by the original controller design, claiming it to be more comfortable to hold and praising its superior button layout. And even though their opinions were wrong and also stupid, in 2018, Microsoft and Hyperkin decided to move the whole industry backwards. This abomination, simply called Duke, is one of the worst things you can spend your money on. It could always be worse. Could have been made by Mad Cats. So when are we going to talk about Halo? I have to admit, the controller is pretty neat, and it's nice to see companies like Microsoft embracing their missteps in such a fun way. It's also really cool that they added a 32-inch TV just so you could play the boot animation. So the controller was too big. How much larger could the console be? Holy shit. Yo, can we talk about Halo? This is the original Xbox. Now, it may look giant and cumbersome, but I assure you, it is. The main reason it's so bulky is the fact that they packed an entire desktop computer into the thing. From a PC optical drive to the 8 gig hard drive, even down to the operating system itself, the Xbox was just a regular computer. All that hardware they crammed into this not-so-small package allowed them to create the most powerful and most advanced console the world had ever seen. It was also the worst DVD player. Fuck! That's right, it had a DVD drive and the games themselves even came on DVDs. But if you wanted to watch the Lord of the Rings extended cut on your Xbox, you had to fork over another $30 to Microsoft for the DVD movie playback kit. Now, from everything I've read, this appears to have been a cost-saving measure. I mean, why pay the license fee per console you manufacture when you can slap that cost on the remote kit and charge the consumer instead? Alright, I got fucked! But from a hardware and even software standpoint, there wasn't anything keeping the Xbox from playing back DVDs. The receiver just unlocks what's already there with a few lines of code. Because it was just a PC, the homebrew and modding community had a field day with it. You could mod your system to run all sorts of emulators, play games off the hard drive, and even make changes to the boot animation. Speaking of Green Kirby, did you know that this isn't pre-rendered? Now that I think about it, wasn't the PlayStation 1 boot logo rendered in real time too? That's not important right now, but what I'm trying to say is that even with all its faults, the Xbox was still an impressive first entry into the console market. But what about the f***ing games. They got hit. With the Xbox and GameCube both launching an entire year after it, the PS2 had absolutely no one to compete with, and was able to build a respectable library. Before the Xbox even hit the market, the PS2 had titles like Devil May Cry, Ico, Grand Theft Auto 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, and the absolute worst version of Half-Life. Add on the fact that it was able to play DVDs out of the box, and it could play almost the entire PlayStation 1 library, the Xbox had a lot to live up to. So did it? Well, yes, but mostly no. While it did show that Microsoft was determined to burn as much money as they possibly could to stay in the console market, in the end, they were just crushed by the PS2 in terms of sales. Now, Nintendo, on the other hand, sure, they ended the generation a distant second. But for a first entry, it really didn't do too bad. And considering the competition, they had possibly the best launch they could have hoped for. And it all came down to the games. While there weren't too many, a few of the launch titles were worth playing. You like cars? Project Gotham Racing's got you covered. Fighting games and Big Ol' Bazong is more your style? You've got Dead or Alive 3. Fun with friends? You've got Fusion Frenzy. Action platformers? Oddworld. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater? Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X. But there was one launch title in particular that was arguably the most influential game to have ever been released on console. Shrek! Halo launched alongside the Xbox and shook up the entire gaming industry. While GoldenEye may have introduced first-person shooters to consoles, Halo perfected it. It elevated the entire genre and set standards that are still being followed today. Now, I'm not saying that other first-person shooters at the time were bad, they just felt all over the place with controls and game feel. Sometimes right bumper would be fire, other times it would be X. Some games had the ability to look around while moving, while others were bad. But when you put them all up against each other, none of them can hold a candle to Halo. It's a joy to play, it's easy to control, and it really feels like the Xbox controller was made specifically for Halo.
Not this one.
The variety of weapons is great, the sound effects are perfect, the AI is fantastic, and don't even get me started on the soundtrack. Halo is a shooter with the story and characters that you care about. The game is built with exciting gameplay in mind, and the level design is perfect, almost perfect. Fucking library. As a game, Halo's great, but for a launch title, it was exactly what Microsoft needed. And the best part?
This.
Halo 2. It released in 2004 and took the series to new heights. Along with some of the most iconic maps in the series, you also got better visuals, a deeper story, and online multiplayer. There were also some changes to the weapons. You were finally able to use the energy sword, and you could now make use of your left hand.
Oh.
You also got to play as the Arbiter, but Halo wasn't the only thing that the Xbox would have going for it. Both Forza and Fable started on the Xbox. For exclusives, they had Jet Set Radio Future, Knights of the Old Republic, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, and Shenmue II. Releases of Morrowind, Doom 3, and Counter-Strike also made their way onto the Xbox as console exclusives.
What? You're jealous of the PlayStation 2 for its shitty port of Half-Life? Don't be.
And while it only had a handful of exclusives, it also received many of the popular titles from third-party publishers. Need for Speed, Medal of Honor, Prince of Persia, even Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and Sonic made their way onto the Xbox. And while there was no match in sales, games, or exclusives, you can't deny that Microsoft set new standards with the Xbox, and Halo alone. Standards and ideas that carried into the following generation of consoles and can still be seen today. One of those ideas was Xbox Live. Connecting your home console to the internet wasn't anything new, but all previous attempts were either horribly designed afterthoughts or completely overlooked and ignored. Microsoft wanted to change that and put network connectivity as a main focus for their big ugly box. One of the ways they pushed it forward was to include a built-in broadband adapter on every single Xbox they made. With no need for additional hardware, you would think it would be fairly easy to get customers to connect their consoles to the internet. There was just one small catch. It wasn't free.
What?!
Understandably, Microsoft knew that customers weren't going to pay for a brand new service on an unproven console. This is where the Xbox Live trial cards come in. Simply activate the code, and you get access to Xbox Live for 2 months, free of charge. And to saturate the market, these trial cards ended up just about everywhere. And I mean everywhere. And alongside the launch of Xbox Live, Microsoft also sold the Xbox Live Starter Kit. These bundles came with game demos, up to a year of Xbox Live, full games, and many of these kits came with Xbox Live Arcade. These discs would include some arcade classics, with the ability to purchase and download more from the internet. Downloading games, buying DLC, and playing games online were all new to the mainstream console scene and pushed the market to what it is today. But what is online multiplayer if you can't yell at each other?
Dog shit!
Also included in the starter kit was the Xbox Live headset. With it, you can send voice messages and chat in multiplayer games. Plug it in and you're ready to make fun of people you've never met. But even with everything they put into it, and all the exclusives, the Xbox only barely started to turn a profit the year before they released the 360. And though it ended the 6th generation of consoles as a distant second to the PS2, it was still second place. That's because Microsoft was able to tap into what makes gaming the behemoth that it is today. The Xbox was fun, and I'd argue still is today. Now, that's not to say that the PlayStation 2 isn't fun, because it definitely is. It's just nice to see a mega corporation like Microsoft enter into the console space, toss around a few $1 billion, change it up a bit, and still manage to check all the boxes. Well, almost all the boxes.
I grew up with the PlayStation 2, just like most everybody else, and only recently came in owning an original Xbox, and I've got to say, I really like it. I've even had more enjoyment on it than my PlayStation 2 recently. And that got me thinking, if I could go back in time and change what console I grew up with, would I?
Each console had something really good going for it. The Xbox was the most powerful, and it had Halo. The Dreamcast was the first to come out, and it had some killer exclusives. The GameCube, of course, had all the Nintendo exclusives, and a handle, and the PlayStation 2 had the largest library and the most exclusives. That's a really tough question.
But a really easy answer. No.